What is good, Mexit Planners? Welcome back to another edition of the Story Couch. Today I have two awesome guests, good friends of mine that are the absolute OG expats in Yucatan. These guys have been here for more than collectively probably 40 plus years?
40 plus years.
Yes, so they are definitely the couple that I know that's been here longer than almost everybody. So what we're gonna do today is just give you a little bit about their story, talk about all the things that they're involved in, and really get to know both John and Kimmy. We have John Carney and Kimmy Suki. Now you may be wondering, why is it Kimmy Suki, right? Because that's what everybody here knows her as, but nobody really knows that that's not her real last name. So Kimmy, do you want to tell the story of Kimmy Suki?
Yeah, absolutely. So right when Facebook first came out, I made my name on Facebook, and it was Kimberly Dawn David DeGraff, which is my real name. Everybody who knows me knows that's my real name. And I had a bar right in Paseo Montejo, right in front of the Monumento de Banderas, which now they call the Monumento de Patria. And the bar was called Urban Sports Bar, and it was a sports bar. And one day, and so Facebook had just came out, and my real name was the whole title back like what we did before we knew about being afraid on social media. And a guy came into my bar who was having a dispute with my manager, who had gotten kicked out the night before for being drunk, and he came in and he held a gun to us.
Ooh.
My office manager is about a 6'7", 6'9" Mexican guy who had already been shot in the butt once as a bodyguard before, so he managed it so beautifully. But that night we convinced the guy to leave. We ended up giving him a drink. He completely de-escalated the situation. But he was like, Kim, you need to change everything on social media. You should not have your real name. You shouldn't have pictures of your children. And now, I mean, imagine, this is like 16 years ago or whatever. So my nickname by my sisters is Kimmy Suki. And so Suki means love. And we used to make jokes that we were the Suki sisters. And so I changed it to Kimmy Suki. And so that's how it's Kimmy Suki. But my real name is Kimberly David DeGraff.
Awesome. When you first get here, one of the people that someone will ask you, do you know, is Kimmy, right? Have you met Kimmy? Do you know of YGO? Do you know of all these things that she's involved in?
It's all lies.
Yes.
Everything is lies.
You just said something that was so intriguing, the fact that the Patria was not called the Patria 20 years ago, right?
It was not. It was called the Monumento de Banderas.
Banderas. One of the things I'd love to know is, how did you get here? Why Merida? Why Yucatan? How did that journey start for you?
Well, I think we should start with John, because John's been here actually a lot longer than me.
So John is the OG.
I don't know about that. I came here, so I lived first in Guadalajara when I was a kid. My parents were missionaries, so they brought me here when I was 4. And so from 4 all the way up, I've basically been here. I went back to the States for a brief period, did a little time in the military, and then came back, and have just kind of been here ever since. So I've been here most of my life in Mexico and in Merida.
So Spanish is your first language almost? Or?
English is my first, but Spanish is like a very close second.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So I picked it up when I was 4. We lived and we came down here, and my parents went to language school and whatnot, and they hired a nanny for me.
Okay.
And the nanny spoke no English. So that was that. A couple months later, I was speaking Spanish nonstop, and then just kind of been. So I learned it, and I learned it somewhat in school. I did schooling in Spanish as well, but for the most part, it's been all kind of on the streets, I guess, which sounds. But so I've just learned on the streets,
on the streets.
But I just learned. So it's all very. I don't have a very good formal Spanish, like writing.
Yeah.
I can write, but it's not great. But speaking, I do.
No, you do great. I always, whenever we're together and you just flip it, I'm like, man, that's hashtag goals, right? That's where I want to be one day, and hopefully it doesn't take me 20 years to get there.
Did you know people introduce John as that? They'll say the locals. They'll say our local friends. They'll say, this guy speaks better Spanish than I speak.
Oh, wow.
That's the joke amongst all the friends of ours.
I do speak Spanish. So.
Yeah, no, you do speak Spanish. It is very, and that is a blessing to have the command of both languages, especially living here for as long as you have. So you've been here 30 plus years then?
Like 20. So
I think it was 27, right?
I'm 37. I've lived here 28.
28. Wow.
So 28 total.
Yeah.
So I've been here most of my life. Like I said, I grew up here, and then went back to the States for a little bit, and then just came back here right after kind of the military and a little bit of college, and then just been here ever since. I wasn't necessarily planning on coming back. This is back in like 2011, 2012. when I came back. I wasn't necessarily planning on staying here, but then I met Kimmy and decided life was pretty good here, so I just keep it going.
Met a good reason to stay. That's awesome.
Sounds all right. Sounds all right.
And Kimmy, where are you from?
I'm from California.
Okay.
And I came to Merida when I was 28, about. My first marriage, my ex-husband and I came together. He was offered a job in Cancun, actually, not Merida. And I kind of threw a fit. I had done a little bit of research. But, I was talking to somebody the other day. It was back to do research. You had to plug in the computer and the phone line. And it was like, ring! And nobody could use the phone the whole time. And I did my research. And I told the franchise that wanted to bring us down here, the company that wanted to bring us down here, that I really felt like Merida sounded like a better fit for our family. And the owner of the franchise says, you will absolutely fail there if you go to the Yucatan. And I was like, why? And this is all on phone calls. And he said, because they do not speak English. Nobody speaks English. Everybody speaks Spanish and Mayan. And they're also not very welcoming. You're going to have a really hard time. And I said, after the research that I've done, I think that Cancun wouldn't be a good fit for me. And I insisted. I kind of put my foot down. And he finally said, fine, but you're going to fail.
Wow.
And I'm on, in September, will be 23 years here. When we got here, it was definitely a struggle with the language, but the people were very welcoming. All of the misconceptions about the Yucatan completely washed away within 3 months here. The Yucatecan people were very warm and loving. And I tell people all the time, I really felt like I was born in the wrong country. I really felt from the time that I arrived here that I was very Yucatecan. I understood the culture immediately. I understood the values, the unity and the family, the slow, quiet life. I mean, we don't see that now after 22 years, but back in the day, it was very quiet. You knew all of your neighbors. I mean, we know all of our neighbors now, but it was a little bit different back then. But I fell in love with it. We fell in love. So we offered about the company, and then we stayed. And that was in September. It'll be 23 years running my own chiropractic and physical therapy center.
So now you're completely fluent in Spanish.
Yeah, and it took me, people ask often, how do you become so fluent in Spanish? And I say, the biggest thing right now is there are so many crutches now that we didn't have that many years ago. We have cell phones, we have Google Translate, we have Hennessy's, which is a great bar. We have Facebook.
Shout out to Sean.
Yeah. we have so many things at our hands, at our fingertips. But back then we had absolutely nothing. It was literally you walked into a store and you pulled the book out and you're like, okay, And so being completely immersed, and then also making friendships by only Spanish speaking because nobody spoke English here 22 years ago. Now you get in the Uber, you go to the store, everybody speaks a little bit, but back then nobody spoke English.
So what would you say, the biggest difference in the expat or immigrant community is now versus 22 years ago? I know there's probably 16 or 17,000 folks that live here full time today. What would you say what the number was? You and John?
I would say there was about 17 of us, and of the 17, I was the young. There was about 3 or 4 young people. Everybody else was 80 plus, and there was about 5 criminals walking around, running from the law. I would see one walking down the street, and then I would race home and plug in my computer line, and then I would look on America's Most Wanted.
Oh wow. That's awesome.
20 years ago. So I never found anybody, but that was it. I think that there was probably about 20 foreigners here. That's what it felt like. And then I met the International Women's Group, which is also a great organization. And that group was a little bit bigger. I think back then it was maybe 30 women.
Wow.
Yeah, But the average age was 70, 80. And slowly the women, as they passed away, I was like, well, this is kind of hard, having your friends pass away. They were English speakers. And then I just completely integrated in the culture and started making only local friends.
No, that's basically the same. So I grew up in a missionary family. So there was other missionaries from the States or Canada. So there was maybe, 20, 30 people that I kind of saw. And you run into some people randomly. But basically there was nobody. I was thinking about, I always tell people when I got here, now there's all these great restaurants and places you can go. I feel like back then there was Trompos. It was the only thing. Trompos is great. Trompos is great. But it was there's Trompos, the street tacos, and that's what there was back then.
Well, it's amazing. The culinary scene we have here in Merida is pretty phenomenal. When we got here, almost 6 years ago, I guess it's been close to 5.5, October will be 6, but it felt like there were definitely more older expats even then, and it was only maybe 50, right?
Yeah.
Probably a little bit more, but it definitely seemed like a really small number of folks.
Retirees,
yeah, definitely. And you know, it was not the family situation that we have now, you know, 6 years later. So that's been a change that I've seen, and I know you guys have seen the same thing. So we're all permanent residents here. Have you guys thought about in the last 20 years of becoming citizens? John, how about yourself?
Yeah, definitely. More so recently. Just haven't done it. We're kind of working on it and getting the process started now, which is pretty complicated.
Yeah.
It turns out is pretty complicated. I haven't done it just because, I don't know, it wasn't broke, so I didn't fix it.
Yeah.
Just kind of kept going, never had any issues. The permanent resident card gets you in and out, no problem.
Yep.
It's just been pretty seamless. But now we're looking more at, I'm looking more at becoming a resident.
In all the years that I've been here, so the first 13 or 14 years, they did not hand out residency. So every single year, I had to pay 20 to 30,000 pesos to be here for the first 13 years here. They did not hand out residencies. I didn't know one person who had a permanent residency. I had a child here. My first child here was in my third year here. They still wouldn't give me permanent residency.
Wow.
So every year I had to pay. And then strangely, I want to say it was 13 years ago out of nowhere, or 12 years ago out of nowhere, they were like, yes, you can have your residency, permanent residency. And I jumped obviously on it. But a year prior to that, I had applied to become a citizen because I was so integrated in the community. I had one child already born here. I'd had my business here for all those years. And I was denied.
Wow.
I was denied. I went through the whole process. I paid the fees. I did the test, and it just wasn't good enough. They didn't give me a reason why. I want to say I paid maybe 20 or 25,000 pesos that long ago. Still was denied, and so there seemed to feel like there was no reason with our permanent residency because you can work, you can come in and out. But recently, with the political climate, I have 100% decided to go ahead and go forth and become a Mexican citizen again. And let me tell you, it is daunting. I have downloaded an app that was given to me with all of the with all the questions. And I was driving to go do a delivery of toys and wheelchairs out into a village for the foundation, Yucatan Giving Outreach, and I pulled it up and I was in a car with Mexicans and I was going through the questions and they knew about 10%.
Yep.
They knew 10% of those questions. I was like, guys, I'm going to be denied again. But I will say that I know several people who have passed the process and have been given citizenship that have been here less time than me. So I'm hopeful.
I would love to get the application in and get the process started this year. So please share any information and I'll do the same.
Absolutely.
So that is important. You know, I just don't ever want to have to leave. So, I mean, that's the easiest way. Yeah.
It's not broke, but you don't want to get kicked out.
Yeah, I don't want to get kicked out. Like, that is just the fact, right? So I love life here and couldn't imagine. I mean, that would be a sad day if
I'm very confident with all of my connections with the government that us permanent citizens, our permanent residents, will be accepted here. Permanent residents are going to be honored here. But I did hear recently that they are freezing some of the people being in process right now with everything going on in the United States. And I've even heard that they have been canceling some of the recent applications.
Ooh.
So it's like almost everybody that's been in before, we're kind of grandfathered in. I don't know if that's true or untrue. I will say that I know several people who do this process have commented on it.
Wow. And I mean, if anybody knows what's happening with their ear to the street, it is Kimmy. So tell us about work. You brought up work, and I know you own a business here, and you have for the last 20 plus years, 23 years.
Yeah, actually, I bought out a franchise that has 26 years here in the Yucatan.
Okay.
It's a chiropractic, physical therapy, and massage therapy clinic. I bring doctors of chiropractic here from the U.S. I'm currently working with my ex-husband, who's a doctor of chiropractic, but before him, I brought other ones. Mexico currently does not have a licensing for doctors of chiropractic.
Interesting.
So in the state of the Yucatan, there's only 2 doctors of chiropractic. The rest of them are bone setters or bone crackers, which isn't anything bad, but you know, some things are kind of delicate. So that has been very good for us about, one, giving out education. We've worked with the WHO, with the World Health Organization, trying to educate people on the difference of a bone setter or cracker and chiropractic. But I've been doing this here for 23 years. And then about 4 years ago, I stepped out of the franchise. I felt like they were making medical really very commercial, very business, and I don't feel like health and business really go hand in hand. So I stepped out of the franchise 4 years ago, and so now I've just been running it independently from the franchise, although I have a really good relationship with the franchise. So we're really good friends. In fact, they just opened up here. You know, we encouraged them in an inauguration. I've been giving them contacts, but we stepped out, and I've been doing that for a really long time, and I love it. It's my passion.
Very cool.
It's my
Very
passion.
cool.
Statistically speaking, for the last 22 years or the last 19, 20 years, we've only had all Mexicans and 1% foreigners. And then the last 3 years, I want to say we're probably at 30, 40% immigrants, foreigners, expats, and the same amount of Mexicans, but we've had a huge influx of support of the community.
That's
and
awesome.
That's wonderful too. It's really wonderful.
Yeah, if you need chiropractic services, Kimmy, what is the name of your clinic?
It's called Yucatan Health Center, and you can find us on Google Maps and Facebook.
And are you guys still downtown?
We are still downtown. We're getting ready in the next few months to locate to we have 2 stories, so we have found a 1-floor, nicer, bigger building. So we'll be moving in the next 2 to 4 months.
Nice,
Yeah.
nice. And John, you work remotely, correct?
Yeah. So I've been working remotely, I don't know, the last 10 years or so. A couple different jobs, mainly in the real estate kind of category. So I just kind of happened upon that 10 years ago and kept doing it, and just kept doing that. It's been great for flexibility and just kind of doing school pickups and whatever else I needed to do.
Yeah, and I know, you know, the current theme that I've seen is remote workers are entrepreneurs. Most immigrants here or retirees, right? So if you're trying to figure out what you're going to do when you move here, definitely either start a business or work remote.
Yeah, a lot of people, I think too, they come here thinking they will find that remote work while they get here, but we tell people it's really important to have that established before you get here.
Yeah.
Because some of them you have to do training. We've had several people that we know have come here thinking they would find remote work while they're here with some savings, and it didn't work, and they ended up having to go back and then come back. So I highly recommend that also.
Yeah, making sure you have your financial picture in place before you come is the number one thing I can tell you.
For success,
Yeah,
absolutely.
for sure. One of the things that we wanted to do when we first got here was to figure out how to give back and volunteer. Like John, I actually came here on a church mission trip. So
Did you really?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, so I wasn't with my missionary parents or anything, but the way we ended up in Merida, living in Merida, was actually through a church mission. We came here, 2018, I think it was. To work with a church in Dizentoon. And then after that, we came back in 2019, early 2019, and we did our exploratory trip, and the rest is history. We moved in October. So
that's cool.
Nice.
yeah, so that's actually how we ended. You know, one of the things we've been looking for the entire time, and we found it really early on, was a way to give back to the local community. And that's been through the thing that we heard over and over again is YGO, which stands for Yucatan Giving Outreach. And Kimmy is responsible for Yucatan Giving Outreach. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, sure. I want to say it was maybe around 10, 11 years ago. I had a friend from the U.S. consulate who he was being relocated somewhere else. And he was like, hey, you're the only friend with a truck, and I need you to come by and pick up some stuff. And I was thinking, no, I don't want to do it. And he was like, no, you got to do it. So we loaded up his stuff, and I took it to a shelter. And it was an elderly shelter. And when I got to this elderly shelter, at that time, I want to remember it was 92 or 96 elderly that were in a shelter. It's called La Divina Providencia in Colonia Maya. Great place. And when I got there, the pastor, the father who had been running it, had passed away, and the elderly there were really struggling. There was 6 nuns or sisters there at the time running it, but at that point, I want to say it had been 2 weeks since the elderly had had any fruits or vegetables.
Ooh.
There was a provider of chicken and pork and water, and that's all they had been eating for 2 weeks. And I went to take these donations, and I looked around, and it really pulled at my heart, thinking, I've always volunteered here. I've always donated. I did shoe campaigns here when I first got here. I've always done a little bit, but something about that particular situation, it really pulled at my heartstrings, and I went to the community. And I created a Facebook, it was a Facebook group called Yucatan Giving Outreach, and it meant people who had resources to give it to those in need. So it was a way, and I wasn't a nonprofit back then. I didn't want to get my hands dirty. I wasn't trying to collect money, but I was like, hey, if anybody would like to donate fruits and vegetables to this elderly shelter, these guys are really struggling. And in that, a whole bunch of comments came up, and people were saying, I'll take it, or let me give you money. And I said, I'm not a nonprofit. I do not want to take money. I'm asking you, here's the address, go take it yourself, go take a look at it. And somebody in those comments started attacking me. The government has an obligation, da, da, da. And I said to her, well, and I was in my ego, I guess, and I was getting offended, and this is all on social media, and we're like going back and forth. You know how it gets really heated? And I thought, you know what, let's pause. And I said, I'll tell you what, if you think you can do it better than me, why don't you meet me for a coffee and tell me how it should be done? And I found myself sitting in front of one of the investigators for the state.
Oh, wow.
Who's one of my dearest friends now. And we sat, and she was like, look, and she started laying it out for me. And then she started taking me to other shelters, and then another shelter, and then another shelter. And then I started helping the state do, some recon on what was going on inside of the shelters. And next thing you know, I'm a registered nonprofit. A whole team of people came behind me. What was originally started as a Facebook group to take resources and help other people became a registered Mexican nonprofit. We currently have, so that's how it started. We currently have 2 shelters. We have a boys' home and a girls' home. We receive aged-out children from orphanages. So you get out of an orphanage and you're 18 and you have nowhere to go. We have a transition home. We have a food bank. We have a second-hand store. We give out around 5,000 Christmas gifts, plus around 2,500 food bags at Christmas every year. We have 6 art programs currently running. We have no more garbage bag programs, so kids who get out of orphanages have suitcases even if they're used. So we have another project called AMPI. We help women with domestic violence, victims of domestic violence and sex trafficking, also to go through the legal process or get relocated. So we have all these little programs that got started from me being stuck by a buddy to deliver donations.
So what started off as you got a truck ended up being
11 years later.
Yeah.
It's really important to note if you have a truck,
Yes.
you should be careful.
Yes,
You should be very careful.
Be careful who you tell that you have a truck.
Yeah. So it's been all that, and I think about like why hadn't I ever done this before? I've been here for 22 years, but I really 100% know it's because meeting John and marrying John, he really gave me the freedom to really expand and develop this other side of me. In the U.S., I was a firefighter and paramedic, so it's always been my background to help people, but I was always like struggling to keep my head above water in life. And then I met John, and John really gave me this freedom to just really go with it. And no matter what I have asked of this man, he has said yes. At one point, we had 6 children from the orphanage who had no families living in our home.
Wow.
Like this guy, and he'll be like, no, okay, go ahead. I'm like, what am I going to do? And then he's like, you have to find a new solution. Okay, great. Let me open a shelter. So John has always been the person, he's always been the support that I needed so that I could really expand YGO.
And I know, John, you are definitely, commander-in-chief when it comes to getting things done at YGO. I know you've working on a couple of projects we talked about before this. What you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, I'm more of a behind-the-scenes kind of a guy. I don't really like being in front of the camera, such as this. not my jam. No, but we're working on. There's multiple parts of the city. There's invasions. They're called invasions. Essentially, it's kind of like homeless encampments. They're on government land, so they're not really allowed to build like a proper structure with concrete and blocks and whatnot. So they all kind of basically build everything out of like pallets and trash and cardboard. That's kind of where they're living. So it's kind of like a step up from homeless, but a very mild, very low step up. And so we have several of these places where, a lot of them we typically kind of focus on like single moms or elderly who just don't have the ability to climb up on a ladder or don't have a ladder to fix the roof or put up tarps and whatnot. So we've been going out with just a couple of the guys and just helping solidify some of the structures. I call it the shanty project, because it's all kind of shanty houses, and we're just kind of solidifying them for rains and shelter in some way.
Yeah, you guys are always delivering care packages throughout the holidays. The Brothers and Sisters of Merida have sponsored several orphanages, and I get a big kick out of that every year.
I think you guys have been doing it every year for 5 years.
Yeah. Since we've been here, we've
every
definitely...
year that you guys have sponsored Christmas, and also many of your members also sponsor our monthly rents. Anything that we do a call out for, we have received enormous amount of support. to continue doing the projects that we're doing.
Yeah, so anything that we're doing is definitely through YGO. It all funnels there. And in fact, I first met you almost 6 years ago at a YGO fundraiser at the Polo Club.
Yeah.
It was my wife decorated a Barbie hat. And it was
that was a great hat. That was a great hat. You should cut to a picture of that hat.
Yeah,
that was a great.
I'll bring in the hat. November of 2019, we take an Uber to the Polo Club.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, exactly. So we take an Uber to the Polo Club, and we get out there. We're like, man, this is kind of far. And so we enjoy ourselves, and then the event's wrapping up, and it's like it's time to go. We don't have a ride home. We can't get service. We can't get anything. So we ended up hitchhiking on the Hennessy bus. Yeah,
Leone's bus.
Yes. We ended up getting on the bus with the Hennessy folks. And ended up at Hennessy's, met Sean and
they
the
were
crew.
a handful, that bus.
That bus was.
That's a really good success story.
Yeah, that was.
You said hitchhiking. I was like, my God, you would have given you a ride.
Hey, the Leones loaned us that bus for the event, and then the Leones were like, hey, there was a bunch of drunk stuff and drunk people in the back, and I was like, sorry, Leones.
Yeah, that bus was pretty lively. So we got back there. I guess there were a couple people that left with some friends or what have you. So we were able to get back to the city on the bus that was chartered by Hennessy's, and we ended up at Hennessy's and met Sean and had a great time. So,
I love that story.
One other thing that I want to bring up is recently, anytime that there is a need, right? There's been situations in the past within our community even where a mom got in some trouble. She was arrested, taken to a mental facility, and she was a single parent, and her child ended up in an orphanage here. Can you imagine having your child in an orphanage? And, we were notified as admins of a group, but we couldn't help. So we reached out and we set up the Kimmy Signal, kind of like the bat signal. And Kimmy, knew exactly what to do and how to get this child reunited with their parent.
Yeah. I had to tell you, in the 11 years that I've been doing this and collaborating, I've had the honor of being I just stepped down from 3 years of being the president of victim services for the whole state of the Yucatan via the police department, and doing and always helping out Ayuntamiento, DIF, the police department, Justice Department of Women, the U.S. Consulate, the Colombian Consulate, the Canada Consulate. I have really I've really made connections with different resources here to be able to assist. So when I hear of a situation, and this was a really isolated incident for this poor mom and her child, of course I wanted to jump right into action and help the community, as well as, make sure that it didn't escalate into a bigger problem. And so I find often a lot of local and federal and foreign agencies contact me because I have all the connections. Even with the new change of the administration, I'm already making my new connections. I was just in a meeting a few days ago again. So I'm continuing to make my connections with all federal and government and state agencies, federal and state agencies, to make sure that if in the fact that something happens, that I'm ready to jump into action to help somebody out. Because I try to always think, how would I feel if this was my situation? And right now, I'm on a great path, but my childhood was a troubled childhood, and I think about all the people who intervened to help me out as a kid, and I think about those cases. And in that particular case, that was a troubling case, very isolated incident, and I couldn't imagine if it would have escalated and they would have been permanently separated from each other.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to lose your child to the system in a foreign country. That just, you take locked up abroad to a whole nother level, right? And now your child is separated from you. That's a bad situation. But Kimmy saved the day, and it comes up often in groups of, like, who do we go to if someone is experiencing domestic violence? Who do we go to if someone is having trouble and they need to find a shelter? And ultimately the name comes back to one person. So that's awesome. Kimmy is definitely the bat signal. And the whole reason we're doing this today is because if you're moving here or planning to move here, these are people that you need to know for sure. So Excellent. Let's switch gears and talk about just raising children here, because you guys have done something that not too many people have done, and that's raised folks from all the way from elementary through college, right? Here in the state of Yucatan in Merida. So
I have to tell you, it's been a wild experience, you know, to get here when my oldest was only 4, I guess he was 5 years old. And he went through his whole life through school here. He started out at a school here called Cumbres, very religious Catholic school. They say that they're not, but they are. You have church 3 times a day. I mean, it's pretty religious. So anyway, we started out there, and then in the midst of the divorce, I went ahead and moved them to a few other schools. We tried out a couple other schools, but they went through here. They went through high school here, and then amazingly, when you go to, even if it's a small, I tell parents this all the time. I'm like, let's say you don't have the budget for one of the big private schools here, like Cumbres. But if you even put them in a small private school here, you're still going to be 1 or 2 years more advanced than you are in most schools in the U.S.
wow.
Which is a wild statement to make. I know that that's a wild statement to make, but after watching all my kids go through it, I've seen it. So my kids, in the high school, they went to UVM, they went to Tech Millennial, and then from there, my son who went to UVM, he got jumped right into the U.S. System, and you print your course curriculum, and the schools were like, you're 2 years more advanced. Now that's the oldest. The second, exact same thing. The third, exact same thing. So everything that they had done here, when you print up your course curriculum for the U.S., well above and beyond what the requirements were needed for high school.
And that's based on California or based on?
That's in California.
Okay.
So in California, all of my children transferred into California. They were 2 years more advanced than all of their other peers in high school or college in California.
Did they all go to college in California?
They've all gone to college in California. One graduated from Berkeley. The other one she is milking the system a little bit and still going to she's going to Santa Cruz online.
All right.
But she loves it. And then the other one is in San Diego, in La Mesa Junior College in San Diego.
Wow.
Hoping to get a D1 scholarship and move on in
football
football. Yeah, and he played American football here, and he was an all-star, 2-time all-star here for American football. And then he went to California seamlessly, and then was the star there in California.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's a great success story, and definitely a tribute to your parenting and, you know, raising kids here that are bilingual and completely functional, able to go back to the States and go to college if that's what they want to do. So
I'm 100% confident, and then we have our 8-year-old or 9-year-old who's here. I'm 100% confident. It's not only the school system, but it's the support you receive here as a community. Mexico, Merida in particular, is very family oriented. Everywhere you go, everything revolves around your children. Even if they would have gone to public school here, I know 100% that they would have done wonderful there, because the kids talk about it a lot. The oldest just talked about it when he was home at Christmas. He said, I can't tell you how happy I am and how grateful I am that I was raised in Mexico, because the way I was raised was just so different. Everything is family orientated.
Mm-hmm. I always see this guy in the pickup line. He is, you know, the dad in charge. He's the guy that is leading the group of dads. In fact, you know, we have a dads group started by, did you start the dads group?
I did not. It was actually Hugh.
Oh,
Hugh Miles.
Yeah, I remember Hugh. But now he tried to hand it off.
I tried to get away from the responsibility, but it was thrust upon me begrudgingly. But now I'm in it.
Yeah.
I'm the one. I do a lot of the school stuff because she's at the chiropractic clinic. So I do a lot of the pickups and all that stuff and get involved and it's just, I don't know, it's great. I don't have kids in the States, so I don't know what the school system's like there. I've only done it here, but they make it all, if you're in the right school, it's been pretty seamless and straightforward. There's not a lot of BS. It just kind of flows.
The PTO organization isn't one where you're begging folks to get involved. Every parent is involved. Every parent has a responsibility to the classroom.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's just phenomenal the way these kids are supported in just outside of the normal academic environment. It's funny because Ashlyn and Avery are such close friends. They're both bilingual, right? Yeah. And so they're the bridge for a lot of the kids that aren't.
That's
right. You know, some kids only speak Spanish, some kids speak English, and so they're the group of friends that kind of bring all the other kids together, which is really cool.
And I love that the 2 girls in particular, they're always receiving the new kids, no matter if they're a year or grade 2 below them or above them. they're receiving them and helping them kind of get situated. Talking about this recently with my sisters, because the hands-on, if there's a conflict in the school, it's resolved within the school really fast. You know, and one of them in particular was having all these conflicts and bullying in the US and California in particular, and the school wouldn't get involved. They didn't talk to the parents. And here it's like there's even a little bit of conflict and the school is involved immediately. Everybody was resolved. The parents are talking to each other. There's so much open dialogue and support, but I think it just goes behind what everything about the Yucatan and raising your children here are about. It's all about supporting the children. It's all about families. It's about taking, like, my staff will come in the office and they'll be like, my kid has a dance and I'm not coming to work on Friday. And this is, as a business owner in Mexico, you're like, okay, well, enjoy the dance. There is no ifs, ands, and buts. There's no penalizing. There's no this or that. They're like, okay, well, I guess you won't be here then, because that's what we do. And that's part of the culture.
That is part of the culture.
It's part of the culture.
One of the things that is part of the culture here is having a nanny. We had a live-in nanny for 3 years. The first 3 years we were here. Shirley is family, and she graduated college. She just got her diploma. She was just back here recently. She's off in the States being a nanny there, and you know, we miss her dearly. But having a nanny is such an integral part of your family community here. And I know at one point before we found Shirley, we actually reached out to Kimmy to find a nanny, because we didn't know where to look. Like, how do you find a good nanny here? And you connected us with a young lady that was in Mashkanu, I believe.
Mashkanu, yeah.
Yes, it was a long way.
Yeah, it was a long way. You know, it's really interesting when people ask me about nannies. I've been here, in the 22 years that I've been here, I've had the same cleaning lady. She used to be my original nanny. She's been with me 20 years now.
Wow.
20 years. John and I, mostly John, we just bought her a house a few years ago. Yeah. To tell her thank you for all of her years of service. But when you come here, I always tell people it's really important to do a little bit of research about the culture in nannies. A lot of misconception about nannies is that the nanny also cleans your house and cooks your dinner and da-da-da-da. And I say no. You will burn out a nanny, or you will burn out your name in the community. It's really important to understand that a nanny is a person that is hired to take care of only your child and any needs of your child. That would be picking up, cooking, cleaning of only your child, right? But having a nanny here is also supporting the community, and it's also integrating in part of the community. And then a cleaning person would be a separate person, and the cleaning person is responsible for cleaning the house. But it's a great way. When I first came here, the franchise owner, his name's Dr. Moises Resnick, he said, you have to have a nanny and a cleaner. And I said, absolutely not. You know, it's not part of our U.S. culture from the United States. And he said, you will support somebody of the community. You are providing a job. You are flowing the money back out. And by digging in your heels and not doing it, you're not supporting the community, and you're not integrating yourself, in particular in the Yucatan. So, and then now I have Magali, and she's been with me all these years. But yeah, I highly always recommend people to do it. The best way to find a good nanny is by word of mouth.
I was gonna say, I'm sitting on the edge of my seat trying to get this tip right. But word of mouth is pretty much it.
Word of mouth. And then the other thing that I always say that's really integral into a nanny staying with you is to understand the local culture of the nanny. Not giving out loans, that is a big no-no in the community. Not paying what you would pay in the United States. You need to look at the local prices and fees and accept that. And then also not undercut. So I know a lot of people that expect that they're going to come to Mexico and a nanny is going to be $5 for an 8-hour shift. That also is not a reality, but you need to reach out to local businesses and find out what the local rate is. Before I offer a nanny or a babysitter price, I always reach out to a couple companies that I know that run nanny companies, and I'm like, what is the current local rate? A lot of the people that were living out at the beach, the retiree couples, were paying their cleaning people 500 pesos an hour.
An hour?
An hour. 250, 300 pesos an hour.
Go clean somebody's house for 500 pesos.
And that is also the dark side of gentrification of the community. Now, there was a whole bunch of people out there who would only accept that rate and then became unemployable and then had no jobs. And then local businesses also couldn't find anybody to work in their little tiendas or stores. And so it created a big destruction of the economy out of the beach in the local community, because the elderly did not realize that that was not the price, the people who lived out there. That you need to really research and go, this is the local rate, this is the local customs and cultures, this is what it looks like, and then follow that, so that you don't make make any type of waves in the local community. Out at the beach, though, there were many businesses that lost their businesses because they couldn't find employees.
Wow.
Because they wanted this rate that the foreigners had set up.
Wow. So you mentioned the gentrification word. You brought it up, and we got there. so in 20 years, right? You guys have both been here, and I know that especially now, the first thing that folks say that in a negative way is that we're gentrifying the city. We're gentrifying the state. Now, let me give you some context. Merida has about 1.1 million people in the greater Merida area, if you will. And there are about 17,000 immigrants that live here full-time. And I would say full-time and snowbirds, right, that go back and forth, but come every single year. It's a very small population to really, we're not moving the needle in any direction for the most part. However, there are a lot of foreigners that are Mexican nationals that live or that are from other places in Mexico that move to Merida. And they also affect the economy and the population here. So, John, what have you seen or what have you heard? Because you are a fluent Spanish speaker. What are you hearing? What's the vibe on the street from the local community in terms of the immigrants here?
I think, like you mentioned, the numbers don't lie. 17,000 versus 1.1 million. I think expats are affecting some form of gentrification, but you hit the nail on the head because it is not just people from the United States and Canada, it's people from Mexico City, Monterey. So it's a combination of everybody coming in. I think that the expats maybe get more, they're more on the front page because it's just,
we're different.
Yeah, this American came down and did X, Y, Z, and so that's another thing to just kind of be mindful is when you come down to kind of what, like she was saying with the nannies, is adhere to the local customs and kind of try to blend in if possible. That would be a good tip. But yeah, I think the gentrification and the inflation and the prices are rising just because Merida's a really cool city and everybody wants to come here.
In the short time that we've been here, there's a train built, there's a subway or a tram, there's La Plancha, there's a Central Park. There's a lot of change that's really positive for this city, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's attractive, not to mention it's 25 minutes to the beach from here, right? Yeah. So, you don't get that. You can't name a city in the U.S. that's not already sky high where you can live 25 minutes from the beach and have major services.
I think the word's out. I think it's just what it is. It's just part of so I think it's here. I think it's not turning back. Unless, the city completely does a 180, which I don't see that happening. No. I think the expats, especially recently with the political climate, they just get more news. If you're somebody from Mexico City and you do something quote unquote bad, maybe nobody says it. But if you're from California to do it, people are going to make waves.
Page. It is. So the newspaper here is kind of like Mayberry, right? So any little thing that happens, it makes the major news. It makes the front cover. And there's been a lot of bad behavior by foreigners in this season, for sure.
Yeah, I just went to, I was just invited to a powwow with the U.S. Consul Ayuntamiento from the beach, Ayuntamiento in Merida, because this particular thing, they wanted to know what I was seeing. The news loves to do the sensationalization of the news, and they're like, foreigners, and they were like, Kim, what's your take? And I'm like, well, I have all the cases. I've been tracking them case by case by case by case. And I'm like, it's American citizens too.
Any type of bad behavior definitely makes the news.
The powwow in particular, what the Yucatecans had brought, the Yucatecan government officials had brought, was they were saying that they wish that more people were understanding of something called usos y costumbres, which is basically how would you translate that the best, love?
Just customs.
Local Yucatan customs. And we were talking about creating a campaign to help foreigners who are coming here understand some of the customs. And some of the customs are really simple, like whoever's inside the glorieta has the right of way. People don't realize that pedestrians don't have the right of way here.
Really?
No.
Really.
Now, I always say I want to walk like the confidence of a Mexican pedestrian, right?
But you only, if it's a raised ramp, you have the right of way. Otherwise, you do not have the right of way.
The lines mean nothing?
That doesn't mean anything.
Does not mean anything.
Yeah. If you have the raised, peatonal, that is, you have the right of way, you're in.
But otherwise,
But if it's just lines,
That's why you'll see, that's the only time you'll see everybody slam on their brakes when somebody goes to walk on the
Absolutely, yeah.
raised, because you have the right of way on the raised crosswalk. But all of the regular ones, you do not have, pedestrians do not have the right of way in the Yucatan. And so I tell people all the time, be very careful when you're walking, you do not have the right of way.
What other customs do you think that, besides driving, like what are some of the other customs that
Well, in the campaign we're working on an initiative to try to help other people integrate better, and they call it in Spanish sana convivencia. It's basically what would be the translation of that?
it's like
Healthy living together.
Healthy fellowship, kind of.
Healthy fellowship. And some of the customs, for an example, on Monday in the Yucatan, everybody eats frijole con puerco.
Yep.
You know, that's one of the customs. The other thing is that most businesses close down from 1 to 4 for the heat, but also that so you can have lunch with your family and take a nap.
So the siesta thing is real. I've never,
Yeah.
you know, you don't really see it a lot. I don't see it a lot when I go to different businesses.
My
but
business is closed from 1 to 4.
Really? I didn't know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Every day. It's closed from 1 to 4 because that is the custom.
And-
I tried making it gringo and open it all the way through many years ago, and it was not accepted.
Yeah, wow.
It wasn't accepted by the staff or my patients. From 1 to 4 is the time to pick up your children, go home and have lunch,
Yeah.
take your nap. Almost all small Yucatecan businesses, all the doctors, they all do it.
Interesting.
Yeah. So there's a lot of those customs, and we're discussing that. What are the customs that would help foreigners, not just foreigners from the other countries, from this country? Because at the conversation that we had, that was brought up more was as people from Monterey and Mexico City not understanding to be what the culture was in the Yucatan, and the Yucatan doesn't want to lose its own culture. Another one we were talking about at this platform was also the noise. Like, a lot of people don't understand that here, technically, your neighbor has a right to play his music as loud as he wants,
Yeah.
and you just need to move on and accept it or rent another house or whatever. And so that was also another thing is here there's a really live and let live. As long as nobody's being hurt
Yeah.
or injured, a live and
Yeah.
let live. So
We've covered a lot. Thank you guys so much for joining me on the Story Couch today. I appreciate you sharing your story with everybody. And truly, if there's something you need to know about life here in the Yucatan, these are the folks that can get it done for you.
I was going to say, contact Monty.
Well, contact me and I'll reach out to them. So I'll send up the bat signal. We've done it on more than one occasion before. But thank you guys so much for sharing all of this awesome information with the folks here at MexitPlans. And until next time, MexitPlans Monty, we're out.